they're welcome in Israel. Is that the right message to be sending now?
Well, it's a message that every Israeli prime minister has sent for the last 65 years. Israel is the homeland of the Jewish people, and our message to Jews everywhere is you should be safe where you are. We hope governments will take the actions necessary to make sure that the Jewish communities there are safe. But every Jew around the world should know, Don, that Israel is a place that they can call home. And when they come to Israel, they're not treated as foreigners who are arriving, but they're treated as people who are finally coming home to our ancient homeland.
Well, so what's the message about sending the bodies being taken, the people being taken back to Israel?
Well, I think it's, I actually think it was a request of the families, and it's an offer that the Prime Minister made, and I think it's a personal decision for the families. You had a huge turnout at their funeral because it's important to send a message that the Jewish people stand with those families, and I think it's a very special place to be buried.
Ambassador, the Prime Minister was front and center at the Unity Parade in Paris. Why not encourage French Jews to stand their ground in the face of terror and stay? Doesn't France need its Jewish population?
Well, I think it's good for France to have a Jewish population, and I think the French Prime Minister said that if the Jews leave France, France will not be France anymore. But look, Israel is a country that, since its inception, has called on Jews throughout the world to come, wherever they live. We hope they will come because they want a better life in Israel, maybe a more meaningful life in Israel. We hope they're not having to flee persecution. But it's very important, Don, to understand something. One thing no one is asking themselves today about the French Jewish community is, do they have anywhere to go? There were Jews throughout history who faced persecution, who faced murder. They had nowhere to go, and the gates were closed to them. The gates of America, the gates of other countries were closed to them. Israel was established to make sure that Jews everywhere will always have a refuge, and that's a message that every prime minister proudly says, and he said it in France.
Yeah. You talked about acts of violence being carried out against Jews, anti-Semitism. Specifically, France showed the staggering number of Jews who have left and have gone to Israel. In 2013, it was 3,000. 2014, 7,000. 2015, 10,000 Jews expected. Are European leaders doing enough to protect their Jewish population and condemn anti-Semitism?
Some are. Chancellor Merkel is a good example. She showed up at a rally a few months ago in Germany and spoke very forcefully against anti-Semitism. The French president, Hollande, and the French prime minister had spoken out against anti-Semitism. But, you know, at the end of the day, what's happening to the Jewish community? Are they being protected? This is not the first attack on the Jews in France. 2 years ago, we had this horrific attack against a school in Toulouse where 4 people were killed, 3 children were killed. And there were a lot of commitments that were made then, a lot of strong expressions of solidarity and support. But unfortunately, the Jewish community feels very unsafe in France today. And I hope maybe this will be a wake-up call to French authorities to not only talk the talk, but to walk the walk, to do whatever they can to protect their community. I think it's important for France, and it's important for that Jewish community as well.
What does this do for the relationship between France and Israel? Does it strengthen the relationship, or does it make it weaker? What does it do?
Well, I'm sure it actually strengthens it, because the Prime Minister came to France, came to Paris, because he wanted to express his solidarity with the French people in their battle against terror. You know, Don, Israel asked the world to stand with us in our battle against terrorism, and we think we're actually engaged in the same battle. So I have no doubt that through this common experience, through this common struggle against terrorism, militant Islamic terrorism, I should say, that Israel and France will actually grow closer together.
What about France's support, though, for Palestine?
Well, I think that was unfortunate, and I think they rewarded bad behavior among the Palestinians. You know, one person who was at the march in Paris was President Abbas of the Palestinian Authority, and that's great that he is marching against the attacks that occurred in Paris. The problem for President Abbas is he's in a government with a designated terror organization, Hamas, whose charter calls for the murder of Jews worldwide. So what kind of message does that send? If you're going to stand against terrorism, stand against all terrorism, not just terrorism against non-Jews, but also terrorism against Jews.
Ambassador Dermer, thank you.
Thank you.
Coming up, Pope Francis speaks out about the Paris terror attacks. I'm going to discuss it with the hosts of New Day, Alison Camerata and Chris Cuomo. They join me now.